A few defining events in our lives are unique to every one of us. One of those instances happened at the age of 7 for Howard Schultz, the man behind the SBUX company. His father had recently lost his delivery job after slipping on ice and hurting his hip and ankle. The family had no medical insurance, no funds, and little hope at that time. Today, Howard Schultz is a multi-billionaire, responsible for altering the coffee sector and numerous other industries that many people are unaware of. We must examine Starbucks' 4 phases to understand how a single coffee shop may grow into a worldwide empire. And it all starts in the 1960s. But before we go through his 4 phases to success, welcome to Investing Wise Academy channel. I am Megan, and if you're new to this channel, please subscribe to be updated for more upcoming videos like this. Phase 1. While traveling throughout Europe, Gordon Boker purchased a cappuccino from a little cafe in Rome, which tasted much better. At the time, most Americans drank either cheap instant coffee or low-quality coffee from eateries. When Gordon returned from his trip, he informed 2 friends about his experience, and the 3 of them agreed to try bring higher quality coffee to the American market. This first SBUX, a modest store with no large plants, opened on Seattle's seawall in 1971. However, the original Starbucks business sold bags of high-quality coffee beans or the equipment needed to prepare coffee at home. However, they did not produce or serve drinks at the store. As a result, growth was sluggish but steady with this company approach. They had 4 outlets in Seattle by 1981, and the coffee was selling well. They did so well that Howard Schultz took notice of them. Despite growing up in poverty and his father losing his job through hard work, Howard had managed to carve out a profession for himself. It wasn't easy. He had to sell his blood to pay for his education. But by 1981, Howard had become the vice president of a firm that happened to be one of Starbucks' suppliers. This is how Howard Schultz first became acquainted with Starbucks. He was interested in the volume of orders this little coffee company was receiving and went to one of their Seattle locations one day to see for himself. He sampled their coffee and became addicted right away. So much so that he decided he wanted to work for Starbucks and went to the 3 founders to see if they'd recruit him. But Howard was the only one who believed Howard joining Starbucks was a good idea. Starbucks' 3 founders were hesitant to allow anybody else to join. And even Howard's mother warned him, "You're doing well. You have a future. Don't give it up for some small company nobody's ever heard of." Despite this, Howard persisted since he was dissatisfied with his existing position and saw the enormous potential for Starbucks. So he continued to write to the Starbucks founders, and after more than a year of persuasion, Howard joined the Starbucks crew. But of course, nobody expected that decision to impact everything. Phase 2. Now, it was Howard's time to visit Italy, and he, like Gordon, the original Starbucks creator, admired the Italian manner of doing things. On the other hand, Gordon liked the coffee's flavor and the way it was brewed. Howard was smitten by something new, the experience. During his journey to Italy, Howard noted that the waiters seemed to know the customers and called them by name when their drink was ready. He also saw that people went to these coffee shops not simply to get a fast cup, but also to relax, socialize, and sometimes work. For example, someone ordered a cafe latte and then tried it himself. He thought, "No one in America knows about this. I've got to take it back with me."
And I was captured emotionally by the Italian coffee bar, the sense of community, the 3rd place between home and work, and I raced back to America thinking, this is what I'd like to try and do and transform the Italian coffee experience into the American society.
Howard's vacation to Italy was a revelation. He noted in his memoirs that initially, Starbucks had sold great coffee beans, but they didn't sell it by the cup. They treated coffee as produce, something to bag and send home with the groceries. But according to Howard, they were losing heart and spirit of what coffee was all about. He believed that, like Italy, they needed to make coffee an experience rather than a product. Howard was ecstatic until he informed the Starbucks founders about his proposal, which they swiftly knocked down. They maintained that Starbucks was a retailer, not a restaurant or bar, and that they couldn't just change their business model and start preparing beverages in the store. They believed things were going well, so why risk it all to become a cafe? Howard's mood began to deteriorate. Eventually, he understood that his ambition of giving the whole coffee experience to America would not be accomplished with Starbucks. As a result, Howard quit Starbucks in 1985 to launch his firm, Il Giornale, the Italian term for a newspaper. He desired the top quality coffee of Starbucks, but with the ambience of his favorite Italian cafes. Almost everyone advised him that leaving a good firm like Starbucks was a poor idea and a dumb act. Over the next year, Howard pitched his concept to 242 people, 217 of whom said no. The most prevalent objection he received to his idea was that Americans would never pay that much money on coffee. Howard's business concept hinged around his selling coffee for $3 each cup, even though coffee was typically sold for around 50 cents per cup at that time. Do you want them to spend 6 times as much for the experience? Yeah, right. But if there's one thing you should know by now, Howard Schultz is a very tenacious man. After meeting hundreds of investors, he ultimately collected enough funding to open his Italian-style coffee shop. But wait a minute, I thought this was supposed to be the tale of Starbucks. So what exactly is going on here? Well, within 2 years of Howard opening his coffee shop, the founders of Starbucks decided to sell up. And because they were still on good terms with Howard, they told him that if he could come up with the money, he could purchase Starbucks.
I was thrilled. And the purchase price was $3.8 million for 6 stores. But I had no money, nothing.
Howard went out on another expedition to acquire funds from investors. Of course, after attempting to obtain funds for his coffee shop, he had an extensive network of investor connections, and he went to each to inform them of the chance with Starbucks. Then, tragedy hits. One of those investors was so excited about buying Starbucks that he sought to take Howard out of the transaction entirely and told the Starbucks owners he'd purchase it directly from them. Howard was heartbroken. He was on the verge of finally buying a Starbucks, but it was stolen away at the last second. He informed one of his buddies about the issue, feeling deflated and discouraged.
And he says to me, come to our office tomorrow morning and meet our senior partner. And I said, okay, who is it? And he said, Bill Gates Sr. And I walk into his office and he says, we're going to go for a walk. And I said, where are we going? And he said, we're going to go see the man. And we walked in. I don't know if he called him. I don't know if there was an appointment. I don't know anything. Bill Gates, all 6'7", 6'8", towers over his desk and says, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is not going to go down. You are going to stand down, and this kid is going to realize his dream.
And it worked because of Bill Gates' father. The other investor withdrew his offer, and Howard Schultz raised the $3.8 million required to purchase Starbucks himself. When Howard became CEO, he instantly turned Starbucks from a location to buy coffee beans to a place where they brewed and gave you the beverages in store. He also renamed Il Giornale cafes Starbucks locations, bringing everything under one roof. Howard's dream of introducing the Italian coffee shop experience to America was finally realized. When you zoom out and look at the timeline, you realize what a few years it had been. Howard found Starbucks in 1981 and joined the company a year later. By 1985, he had left the team to launch his own coffee firm. By 1987, he was back at Starbucks, this time as CEO. He was finally the guy in control, ready to create the future of Starbucks. And believe me, things were going to get insane. Phase 3. As CEO, Howard's approach may be summarized as aggressive expansion. They had 17 outlets when it took control in 1987. But now that Howard had discovered a successful business model and had the backing of investors, it was simple to replicate it. As a result, Starbucks began swiftly expanding its presence worldwide, not only in the United States. Howard sought to take Starbucks worldwide, and by 1998, the company had opened locations in Japan, the Philippines, the United Kingdom, and other countries. In reality, Howard stepped aside as CEO in 2000 to focus only on worldwide dominance. At its peak, approximately 7 new Starbucks locations were established every day, and by 2008, the company had about 17,000 locations globally. With Howard in charge, they'd increased the store size by nearly tenfold. As a result, Starbucks seems to be everywhere. However, when the financial crisis struck, the tremendous rise halted. Starbucks stock price fell by half as customers abandoned their pricey coffee addictions. However, the financial crisis was far from Starbucks' main issue. Over the previous 2 decades, fast growth has obscured a terrible threat boiling beneath the surface. Howard cited various difficulties with the firm, including consumer unhappiness, in a company email that was disclosed to the public. He stated that the rapid expansion had diluted the Starbucks experience. Starbucks was basically in disarray. As a result, Starbucks chose to reappoint Howard as CEO. He spent so many years focusing on expansion, and now his approach was to cease expansion entirely. Instead, he wished to return Starbucks to its original fundamental ideals. He intended to turn the businesses become an experience once more. So he began by removing automated espresso machines. They sped up service while removing the romance and spectacle of watching a barista make a coffee. He also brought back features like in-house coffee bean grinding, which gave the stores that coffee fragrance. On the surface, many of his judgments did not appear to be sound business ones. But once again, it was all about the user experience.
And one of the biggest unorthodox decisions we made at the height of our problems is we decided to close every store in America to retrain over 100,000 people at a cost of $7 million.
This stunned many people and sparked a lot of media coverage and debate. However, Howard thought it was critical to teach baristas how to improve their distinctive beverages. And strangely, the choice was excellent marketing. It signaled to the world that Starbucks was returning to its roots and focused on quality. And it worked. As a result, Starbucks' revenue increased by 143% in 2009. And it's no secret that the company has since continued to flourish and expand. In fact, they currently operate over 34,317 locations globally. But once again, please wait a moment. Starbucks still is one of success, and Howard's ascent from poverty to billionaire is extraordinary. He identified an opportunity, took it to a new market, and developed an empire through hard work and brilliant business acumen. But what is perhaps more striking is where Starbucks is headed. Phase 4. I'd want to ask you a question. What exactly is Starbucks doing? I think that's dubious if you simply stated coffee. This sequence may be recognizable to those who have seen the founder.
You're not in the burger business. You're in the real estate business.
And the situation is identical at Starbucks. There are various areas where they are arguably competing, which can tell us much about Starbucks' future. For starters, in real estate, there is something known as the Frappuccino impact, which refers to a considerable boost in neighboring property value due to the opening of a new Starbucks nearby. According to Quartz, the average American home increased by 65% between 1997 and 2014, whereas the average house within a quarter mile of a Starbucks increased in value by 96%. One of the reasons for this is that Starbucks has a remarkable capacity to identify up-and-coming communities for its outlets. As a result, they were able to purchase the property before the neighborhood's value skyrocketed. Starbucks has a team dedicated to finding new shop sites. Based on a wide range of demographic and property data, this analytical technique has helped Starbucks routinely select successful locations. However, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the presence of Starbucks in a neighborhood fosters the establishment of other eateries and bars in the same area. As a result, it has become busier and more popular. In other words, Starbucks' geographical selections and capacity to gentrify a neighborhood and improve its perceived worth are critical to its success. Of course, many people dislike this and believe Starbucks is to blame for homogenizing towns, making every city seem the same and destroying the region's culture, tradition, and character. Several times they have faced demonstrations and rioting. But that hasn't stopped Starbucks, and this will likely remain a significant part of its future. Starbucks is already present in almost every upscale neighborhood. They will aim to grow into other areas they have not yet reached. However, a second industry in which Starbucks operates is rarely discussed, which may explain even more about why Starbucks has been successful and why it will continue to prosper. Customers may add money to their Starbucks account on the Starbucks app and use it to pay instead of using cash or a credit card. This increases your reward points, allowing you to redeem additional complimentary beverages. Starbucks is now the most popular restaurant rewards program, and consumers aren't hesitant to keep money in the app because of its size and devotion. There is an estimated $1.5 billion in people's Starbucks accounts. That is more than 85% of US banks. Of course, that money will ultimately be spent on coffee, but in the meanwhile, it serves as an interest-free loan to Starbucks. This is when things get crazy. A traditional bank that stores people's money must maintain a large quantity of cash on hand in case of withdrawals. However, because Starbucks money cannot be removed from the app, they are not required to do so, allowing them to invest massively in expansion in a way other firms cannot. Because they genuinely have billions of dollars in consumer funds in their accounts that Starbucks may use to build and grow their business. Starbucks currently derives 26% of its income from things other than beverages, with a sizable portion of that coming from drinks other than coffee. As you can see, the founders were focused on the wrong thing, which is why Starbucks has done so well since Howard took control. They were focused on the coffee and the success of Starbucks, but its future ambitions are not just centered on coffee. Starbucks' actual product the first time Howard Schultz became CEO was the experience. Starbucks has even begun testing reserve roasteries, which are large 20,000 square foot malls meant to be tourist attractions, where baristas experiment with different brewing processes and create new unique drinks. So if you've ever wondered why Starbucks became a coffee juggernaut while coffee shops serving even better coffee failed, the reason is easy. It was never about the coffee in the first place. So what do you think of the story of Starbucks? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you're new to this channel, please subscribe to be updated for more upcoming videos like this. Again, I am Megan. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.